Rolex, probably the most secretive watch company in the world. Rolex is the best known watch brand in the world. Recognition of some of their most famous models, such as the Submariner, the Day-Date, and the Daytona, are global. But what of Montres Rolex SA, the company? Of that much less is known. Its founder, German-born Hans Wilsdorf, left Rolex in the care of a trust when he died in 1960. It's divided into two family trusts. There are no stockholders, profits are divided between the founding families, the firm, and the rest goes to charitable causes focusing on high school education and the training of watchmakers. There is a CEO, but it is not owned by any one individual, except for key executive insiders. Little is known on how management reports to the trust. Rolex's secretive, quietly confidential nature is actively encouraged by those who run the famous watch brand. Understandably, no photography is allowed in any Rolex building, and all employees carry ID cards that are rigorously and regularly checked. Shipments of Rolex watches are conducted with military levels of security because the Rolex really is as good as gold around the world. Rolex take the word private company very seriously, and unlike most watch brands who like to bolster the support of watch journalists and bloggers to garner publicity for their new models, Rolex seeks the help of only a small coterie of hand-picked journalists to spread the word, the controlled word, about new models and events. Should you apply to Rolex to get on their mailing list, in some cases, even for basic press releases, the chances are you will be politely refused. In an age where social media has opened up a direct dialogue between companies and customers, Rolex has been slow and reluctant to jump on the bandwagon. And while there is a Facebook page for Rolex, do not expect to be able to join in a two-way dialogue with the company. They just want to tell their story their way and not allow Facebook to become a comment fest free for all. They want you to lust after their watches, but it seems they don't want to talk to you. While it wasn't always the case, in the modern era, Rolex doesn't need anyone's help to promote itself. It's the only watch company to figure in Business Week's 100 most successful global brands. The cult of secrecy and the dark cloak of confidentiality do not shed any light on how much money the company or the trust makes. But it's rumored that even if they did not sell another watch for years to come, they could continue to operate with a full retinue of staff exactly as they do today. In their own words, Rolex enjoys an unrivaled reputation throughout the world for quality and precision in luxury watchmaking. That in itself is an extremely precise sentence. It wasn't simply written on the back of an envelope. It probably took weeks of rewrites and board approvals to arrive at this statement. When pressed, the company will repeatedly point to the high quality and technical superiority of its product as the reason for its global fame, but it does not come any closer to understanding Rolex the company. If you go searching for Rolex history, you will find only what the company wants to tell you. There are few archives and there is no Rolex museum. It's as if the company has taken its cue from Swiss banks, who will never comment on who may or may not be a client. But is quality and excellence the reason for Rolex's undoubted preeminence? There is no doubt that the company has spent a vast fortune in ensuring their products are of the highest possible quality. Their research labs rival the world's largest pharmaceutical or automotive companies, and just about everything from the super strength 900 and O steel for their watch cases. The special ever rose gold, which doesn't scratch or lose its sheen, is made 100% in-house. No other watchmaker has the capability to make this industrial strength steel in such large quantities. An advertisement which ran many years ago claimed that it takes a year to make one Rolex watch. This in itself was a little secret that Rolex decided to let slip for its own publicity purposes. 800,000 to a million Rolex watches are being made in any one year, but apparently it is true that due to the incredibly stringent tests and the high level of handmade content that goes into the making of each individual watch, it takes around 1 year for a Rolex to finally roll off the production line fully signed, sealed, tested and approved. For large state-of-the-art facilities, for manpower, R&D resources, and overall in-house capabilities, no other watchmaking brand comes close. In fact, Rolex's obsession for improving quality, refining techniques, and developing better materials so as to increase quality and productivity is second only to his passion for watches. It's impressive, but it's only part of the Rolex success story. Sometimes a little luck and marketing know how can help to elevate a brand beyond its rivals. In terms of luck, Rolex just happened to be in the right place in the right era when the biggest consumer boom in a century occurred following World War II. As the American economy improved, middle-class consumers wanted what Rolex was pitching: accessible luxury. Their strategy was exactly right. Rolex stuck to making the best quality watches they knew how and did not diversify. It's still the same stance they adopt to this day. Ford makes Fords, Coke makes Coke, Rolex makes Rolex. Rolex was one of the first to create ambitious advertising campaigns that did not so much focus on the watch but on the individual who wore the watch. This created a powerful association with the brand as being for rugged, adventurous individuals, and even if you are in reality stuck behind the desk all day, or a commuter whose day is ruled by the train timetable, the Rolex on your wrist somehow lends an aura of borrowed success. Throughout the early decades following World War II, Rolex ensured that a string of American presidents, including Eisenhower, Johnson, and Nixon, and a string of other world leaders such as German Chancellors Adenauer and Kissinger, British Prime Ministers Churchill, Eden, and Hess, and French President Charles de Gaulle all wore a Rolex. Even the Japanese Emperor wore a Rolex. While many watch companies went out of business during the quartz crisis of the late 70s to mid 80s, Rolex remained unaffected. As a matter of fact, the number of COSC certified chronometers awarded to the company continued to climb to the extent that by 1990 over 90% of them were being awarded to Rolex. Today Rolex is still a monolithic organization, but it is by no means the only player in the accessible luxury market. In fact, it's a crowded and highly competitive piece of turf. Rolex is surrounded by large and powerful players such as the Swatch Group and the Richemont Group, who between them own just about every watch brand you have heard of, and a few you probably haven't. They too have adopted Rolex's philosophy of bringing everything in-house. And then there's Hublot. Hublot has just joined another giant distribution group, LVMH, the name behind Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, and more luxury brands than you could squeeze into Harrods. Hublot is rapidly becoming the new generation Rolex, reflecting modern individuality in the form of football, motor racing, and rock celebrity. Unlike Rolex, Hublot has an open dialogue with just about anyone fan who wants to get in touch. The brand's two Twitter accounts says a lot about how the two watch companies promote themselves. Rolex tweets are only for approved and invited followers. Hublot is a 24/7 open forum. Is it time Rolex became a little less relaxive and more inclusive? 10 Rolex Facts. 1. Rolex watches have not always been that expensive. Rolex had always provided excellent craftsmanship and advanced technology with their watches. However, they did not start receiving top dollar for them until the 80s. The market demanded flashy items to show wealthy. Rolex increased production but also increased the price. In 1981, the average Rolex cost about $900. By 1991, this price had increased to $2,300–$500. 2. Rolex watches have set sales records. The vintage Rolex market boomed with higher demand for older and rarer watches. An extremely rare Rolex set the price record as the most expensive Rolex watch ever sold. The 1942 stainless steel chronograph Rolex was sold for $1.176 million at Christie's Important Watches sale in Geneva. The sale price has yet to be exceeded. 3. Rolex watches work everywhere. Rolex's reputation for high quality and expert craftsmanship has not been better tested than at the top of the world and the bottom of the ocean. Sir Edmund Hillary reached the top of Mount Everest in 1953 wearing a specially made Rolex watch. The watch performed flawlessly. The US Navy also tested nature by sending a specially designed research submarine 35,798 feet below sea level, wearing a specially designed Rolex watch. It also perfectly endured the extreme environment. 4. Rolex uses and makes the best materials. Rolex takes advantage of the best material when constructing their timepieces. Many of these materials, including stainless steel and precious metals, are made in-house. These high-quality materials ensure that Rolex watches offer better resistance to water, pressure, and shocks. 5. Every Rolex watch is tested. After being assembled by hand, every Rolex watch is pressure tested to ensure there are no air leaks or problems with the case or crystal. These watches are certified to withstand water pressure up to 300 meters or 1000 feet. 6. Every Rolex watch is still made by hand. Though demand and technology has changed, Rolex still makes every watch carefully by hand. Some machines are used, but the bulk of construction and piecing together is still done by hand. 7. How to tell if a Rolex is fake. Rolex watches are so well made that it is usually easy to tell if a watch is fake. If the second hand gracefully sweeps the dial, it is probably a real Rolex. A fake Rolex second hand will tick. 8. Rolex popularity grew during World War II. Because of their reliability and endurance, many pilots in the British Royal Air Force used Rolex watches during World War II. Seeing the value, these watches were often taken by Nazi soldiers. Rolex in return offered replacement to prisoners of war based only on their worth, causing Rolex to become a symbol of POWs. 9. Rolex watches were used for the Great Escape and worn by other famous people. A Rolex Oyster 3525 was used to escape the Nazi prison camp in the Great Escape. The famous story led to the making of the film The Great Escape, starring Steve McQueen. He famously wore a Rolex, as did other famous figures like Winston Churchill and President Eisenhower, even fictional characters like Secret Agent James Bond sport a reliable and useful Rolex. 10. Rolex is Swiss but started in England. Opening in 1905 in London, Rolex was more of a watch assembler than a watchmaker, using imported Swiss watch parts and English watch cases. The company eventually moved to Switzerland as British taxes were high and Switzerland had the majority of skilled watchmakers in the world.